Well, good afternoon. My name is John Levy. It's my distinct honor to serve as the 10th chair of the board of the Legal Services Corporation. And on behalf of our outstanding LSC board, I welcome you to this special forum on increasing access to justice. We'll be privileged to hear remarks from the extraordinary leaders of the greater Los Angeles community. Conway Collis, President and CEO of the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles. Azela Grecian, Senior Deputy for Homelessness and Housing at the Office of LA County Supervisor Holly Mitchell, and Antonio Hernandez, outgoing President and CEO of the California Community Foundation. Today's forum will also feature a panel discussion with leading housing advocates and civil legal aid lawyers on housing insecurity in Los Angeles, moderated by LSC's wonderful president, Ron Flagg. Another panel focused on expanding access to civil legal services will be hosted by a distinguished partner of my firm's Los Angeles office, Sidley Austin, Dan Klivner, among himself and others at Public Counsel. Public Counsel is the largest privately supported provider of pro bono legal services in the country, and today we would like to showcase it here. As we gather today, just a few months before LSC formally prepares to celebrate its 50th anniversary, it's important to recognize the significant contributions being made by countless other legal aid organizations across the country that are not our grantees, but have become an integral part of the nation's providers of civil legal aid, offering important assistance and support to low-income Americans across a whole range of matters that LSC and its grantees are not able to handle. On July 25, 1974, the only president born in California, Richard Nixon, signed the LSC Act. And he did that not as an act of charity, but as a way of preserving a basic right and help low-income Americans help themselves, and I quote, "We have learned that legal assistance for the poor, when properly provided, is one of the most constructive ways to help them help themselves," he said. "We propose simply to protect and preserve a basic right for all Americans." Well, we intend to make this anniversary commemoration more prospective than retrospective, as we call for renewal and determination in pursuing equal access to justice for all Americans. The many projects, events, and initiatives we have planned for this year and next year across the country will shed new light on a wide variety of issues related to a core American value, equal access to justice. And our persistent, really disgraceful failure to make this value a reality for so many Americans. The late and great Stanford law professor and scholar Deborah Rhodey minced no words in describing what we have come to call the justice gap. She put it this way: equal justice under law is one of America's most proudly proclaimed and routinely violated legal principles. It embellishes courthouse doors, but in no way describes what goes on behind them. Millions of Americans lack any access to justice, let alone equal access. Well, LSC's 2022 Justice Gap Report quantifies this observation revealing that low-income Americans do not receive any or enough legal help for 92% of their substantial civil legal problems, and chronic underfunding of LSC and its grantees is helping to fuel this crisis in civil legal aid. LSC's network of 130 grantees with more than 900 offices across our country, employing 10,000 lawyers and paraprofessionals who are working so hard to stretch their limited resources to cover as many individuals as families as they possibly can, but as you know, they're overwhelmed. They have to turn away so many because of lack of resources. So, as grateful as we are that Congress has increased LSC's funding last year to $560 million, much, much more is needed to close the justice gap after years of wholly inadequate resourcing. For fiscal year 1994, 30 years ago, Congress appropriated $400 million for LSC. Our current appropriation has increased only modestly, not remotely enough to keep up with inflation, much less increased demand than for the need for services resulting from population growth, recessions, recently a pandemic that have occurred over the last 3 decades. I'm sure that those visionaries who advocated so forcefully for the founding of LSC would be very proud, as we are, of the work of our grantees. But at the same time, I think they would be so very distressed at the lack of appropriate funding. In last March, LSC requested from Congress an appropriation of $1.5 billion for its fiscal year 2024 budget. This request accounts for the ongoing serious lack of adequate resources and the vital role that equal access to justice plays in maintaining one of the pillars of our democracy, the rule of law. So let's stop for a moment and reflect on that. Given the significance of what it supports and what our budget request is meant to support, I believe our request is very modest. But it is in no way modest in terms of what it means to our country. From the beginning, supporters of LSC recognized that federal funding for civil legal aid is essential to the rule of law, and none other than Donald Rumsfeld, who was then the director of the OEO, argued 50 years ago, we cannot expect for the rule of law, we cannot expect respect for the rule of law if we as public officials do not assure access to the legal process. To fail to do so would break faith with those Americans, rich and poor alike, who have confidence in our legal institutions and the notion that disputes are better resolved in courtrooms than on street corners. As events that have been unfolding across the globe this past week tragically illustrate, the rule of law is so precious, and its collapse is absolutely catastrophic. At an LSC forum, as a part of our board's visit basically a decade ago, to San Diego, where we were greeted by the late, great Greg Knoll. I just have to say that. We miss him already. Well, at that forum, the former Pepperdine Law Dean and 10th Circuit Judge, Danelle Taha, powerfully spelled out what is at stake for our country in her rousing call to action. And I quote her: "When the great majority of the individuals and small businesses of the nation no longer can, or believe they no longer can, get a lawyer, be represented effectively, go to court, settle their disputes in a fair and impartial way, and be treated like every other citizen, we quite simply have lost the guiding principle of our republic, equal justice under law. When that goes, the rule of law goes. And when that goes, the great dreams of those patriots who founded and fought for this republic go with it, never to be reclaimed. Something must be done." Well, for 50 years, LSC and its grantees have been trying their very best with limited resources to do something about expanding access to justice for low-income Americans. Clearly, much more needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. This is happening on our watch. So we call on you and everyone else who's listening, if they are across the country, to join us in this important effort to keep faith with our nation's founding promise of equal access to justice, equal justice under law. Thank you very much. Well, it's now my great privilege to introduce to you your friend among the community in Los Angeles, but you should know, nationally recognized leader of an extraordinary program here in Los Angeles, the extraordinary director of LAFLA, Sylvia Greta.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon. I'm Sylvia Argueta, the Executive Director of the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles. It's my privilege to introduce our next speaker, Antonia Hernandez. Antonia is the immediate past president and CEO of the California Community Foundation, one of Southern California's largest and most active philanthropic organizations. During her tenure, the foundation granted nearly $2 billion to support health, housing, education, and immigrant programs. Previously, Antonia served as the president and general counsel of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, a national nonprofit litigation and advocacy organization dedicated to protecting the civil rights of the nation's Latinos. Antonia began her legal career as a staff attorney with the Los Angeles Center for Law and Justice, and worked as counsel to the United States Senate Committee on the Judiciary. On a personal note, it's been a highlight and honor of my career that Antonia hired me as a staff attorney at MALDEF. She is a mentor and an icon in the legal community, always fighting the right fights, always working towards a more just nation. Congratulations, Antonia, on your retirement, and thank you so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Antonia.
Well, it's nice to be back home. And Sylvia did not mention the fact that I was a lawyer for the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles back in 1976. So I am coming home. But and I did not retire. Friday was my last day. I'm taking back my time. I'm owning my time to do whatever the heck I want to do in my old age, okay? And today is the first day of my, quote unquote, owning my time, and only LSC could have brought me out of my house. My comments are sort of, relate to how fundamental and important legal services is. As an immigrant and a person of limited resources growing up and not having much knowledge of the law, my community and all communities, poor communities, were not given their due. When I went to law school, a lot of my friends were taking landlord-tenant, and I know it's very important for you. But I was taking contracts and insurance because it was in those areas that our community gets screwed, and excuse my French. And I really wanted to have the tools to empower our community to fend for themselves. I just heard partial of the speech about not getting sufficient funds. I worked for CRLA, and I know what it is, and some of my best friends were all legal services folks and attorneys, and I know how hard they work. I know the obstacles that you all face. I know the limitations and the low pay and the sacrifice that you make to uphold our legal system and give it a semblance of impartiality. But the reality is that there's so much more that's needed. At CCF, one of the things that I loved about the California Community Foundation is that we could support and do whatever we wanted to do. And as I stayed there, LA, the capital of homelessness. And if you think about the housing situation, and I'm going to spend 2 minutes on that one because I think that is so important. The housing situation is complex, and it requires many different approaches. We need the nonprofit sector, the private sector. California and Los Angeles hasn't been building for 30 years, and our population has been growing for 30 years, notwithstanding the fact that we lost a couple last year. And so it's going to take us a while to get there. And the question is, what do we do in the interim to keep people with a roof under their head? We cannot solve the health problems if a person doesn't have a roof over their head. We cannot address the employment problems or the mental health problems or the drug problems unless someone has a roof under their head. The stability is critical for trying to address in a holistic manner, the needs of folks who have fallen off the grid. I love flowers, and I've loved going to the Flower Mart. For you Angelinos, you know where the Flower Mart is. It's in the middle of the devastation of humanity. You see it there. And so what I would say to you folks, and I know you do this, we need to think creatively and think of innovative ways, and sometimes think of ways in partnering with folks you would not otherwise partner, okay? It is going to take all of us, the business community, the free market, the nonprofit, all of us to work together. And we need to put aside some of our preconceived notions of righteousness. Because the reality is, we all need to work together. At CCF, on housing, we gave out grants to nonprofit developers, but we also gave grants to for-profit developers. We gave grants to prevent people from being displaced. It's not just building, it's preserving, it's protecting what we have as far as housing. And, working with government, working to eliminate some of the barriers that delay the building of a home. Right now, it's about $550,000 to $600,000 to build one unit. And in order to make it economically feasible, you have to build at least 54 units in order to make it. So you think about that, and we've cut up, sort of kind of figured out what it is. 1/3 is acquiring the land, 1/3 is building the facility, and 1/3 is the bureaucracy. And so we have to work with government. Yes, we want to protect, yes, we want safety, yes, we want that. But really, the bureaucracy is holding us up. And when I go to donors, or I used to go to donors as of last Friday, I don't have to go to donors anymore. Explaining to them why it costs so much money. My response is, you just landscaped your house and it cost you a couple of $100,000. But that's not the solution. The solution is really trying to figure it out and work, I said once again, with the public sector, with the private sector, with the nonprofit sector. One of the things that I've learned, and yes, it's been 50 years of my career, one of the things I've learned is that I'm not always right, I don't always get it, and I have to listen to folks and accept things that I don't necessarily believe in, but I have to be open-minded. I leave you with this. I only spent 3 years at Legal Services. I ran the Lincoln Heights Legal Aid Office of LA, which no longer exists, okay? They tore it down. But they were wonderful years. I had, a caseload of over 100. I used to have my viejitas that would bring me my burritos. You develop this bond with the people. And what they don't have in material goods, they have in bounty of love for their community and for the people that assist them. So to me, you are in the vanguard of making sure that my viejitas continue to receive the assistance that they need. And hopefully your boss here who just spoke can go and finagle more money from Congress so you can get a raise. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Yvonne Maria Jimenez, the President and CEO of Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. It's my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Isela Gracian. Isela serves as Senior Deputy for Housing and Homelessness for Los Angeles County Supervisor Holly Mitchell. She leads Supervisor Mitchell's housing, homelessness, and planning policy. Isela straightens the office of Holly Mitchell because of her more than 16 years of experience in grassroots community work. Previously, Isela worked for the East LA Community Corporation, a social and economic justice community development organization. She served there as Community Organizing Director, Vice President of Operations, and eventually their president. During her time there, she led policy campaigns, community wealth programs, and advocated for development of affordable housing. Isela Gracian is a mover and shaker, a significant contributor to change for the good in Los Angeles County. Please help me welcome Isela Gracian.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you all for having me. We at the county board, we have actually our Board of Supervisors meeting tomorrow, and Supervisor Mitchell was invited to come, and she couldn't come today because we're prepping for that, but I felt it was really important for us to be here with you all. So I will probably dip out at some point, so excuse me for that, to get back to the board meeting. I want to start off by thanking all of you. Right? The work that every one of you does for the people of Los Angeles and across the country is really important and critical. Just this weekend, on Saturday, I got a text from one of my colleagues, and she's like, apologies that I'm reaching you out on your personal cell phone, but my neighbor just sent me this notice that they have, and it was a notice to vacate. Right? It was already on the sheriff's, signed by the sheriff, And she's like, what can they do? And it was one of those moments that I was like, man, if only we had gotten if they had talked to you when they got the first notification, right? And I sent them the information. I was like, and just talk to them and have them be prepared just in case. It doesn't mean that they're going to come on this date, but just in case, right? And unfortunately, that's one too many stories like that our office gets from people that are facing eviction or harassment, whether they're tenants. We also get calls about people who are homeowners at the risk of losing their home through foreclosure or probate, or a whole range of issues that Supervisor Mitchell represents the 2nd District, with the heart of our district is South Los Angeles. We're one of the most diverse districts in the county. And we also are home to the communities and neighborhoods that have historically been locked out of access to capital and resources. And that is at the heart of the work that we do and that she does, and why I joined her team. And when I joined her team, I took a really deep dive around the homelessness issue, because I come out of housing and tenant protections. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised at how much the county was doing around the homelessness services. And it was disheartening to learn that we can't see that it is working because we have not been able to get above the line the prevention, the preservation, and the production. Right? LAHSA, the Los Angeles Housing Services Authority, their focus is once somebody's already unhoused. Okay? And in order for the people who are unhoused to solve their homelessness, they have to be housed. And I also didn't realize how polemic that statement was and how much of a challenge. When I told people, I was like, homes solve homelessness, how many people challenge that notion? Right? That if you're unhoused and you get a home, you no longer are homeless. And I literally have people arguing with me on that point. But the reality is that we will not see the homelessness services functioning if we don't focus on prevention and if we don't focus on preservation and production. As Antonia mentioned, that is such a focal point because it's almost like, even if we just focus on building, it's like trying to fill a bucket of water with holes in it, right? If we don't focus on the preservation, so existing housing, improving it, having it be quality, and the prevention, we're always going to be not having enough on the housing and for people. So for Supervisor Mitchell, we've really been focused in on those 3 areas. You know, she authored the motion to have Stay Housed LA be a permanent program and have a right to counsel here at LA County. And really with the longer term vision of universal access across all of the different issues, she really believes, and our team believes, that every resident of LA County deserves to have access to legal services and representation across all the different issue areas that our constituents face. We've also been really working hard on the Los Angeles County Housing Solutions Agency, La Casa, which is a brand new agency and definitely a interesting challenge for our team on supporting the formation of a new agency and trying to bring in the learnings of collaboration. It's to my knowledge, the first agency that has non-elected officials as voting members of the body, and Almas is one of them, so you'll be hearing from her in a bit. And it's focused on that piece, preservation, prevention, and production. And a missing piece is still the funding. So voters here will have an opportunity to vote for that hopefully soon. And the other area that we've been really focused in on is habitability. Supervisor Mitchell also co-authored around rent habitability and having LA County establish a systematic code enforcement program. So we have a lot of work around this area that we're advancing. I think there's one other piece that I want to touch on, because there's a lot of work that's going on. But as Antonia mentioned, completely agree, we need all the different strategies around housing, around all the different areas. But for me, in reality, it's not rocket science. we know what works, and we need to be able to get to scale. And when it comes to our housing system, right, housing is the superficial system of our economic system. And what's the biggest challenge is transforming how we view and look and engage with land and real estate. Right? And until we can really push and advance the notion of looking at housing as a stability, right? Housing as a human right, and not as a wealth generation and as a wealth creation, we will continue to have this challenge. Because the funding and the cost, I am not a fan of focusing on how much the housing costs. And the reason why I'm not a fan of that is because it is 3 core areas, right? Land, labor, and material. And in order to be able to reduce those costs, most people focus on making it cheaper. And in our communities, in the communities at the heart of the district, in the communities that I come from, that I identify with, we do not need cheaper, we need dignified and high quality and housing and development that connects us and that honors the humanity of people. So although it's important to be effective and efficient in this capacity as government, representing government, it is equally as important to center that this is for people, right? And that is the biggest challenge that we face, and I am very honored and privileged to work for an elected official, for Supervisor Holly Mitchell, that gets that understands that has built a team around that. And every time we're putting our work forward, that is the biggest challenge that we confront. Being able to change the status quo that really shifts and transforms the systems. And legal support is one of those components. Access to representation, another area that I would have never imagined would have so much challenge from people to be able to support, but it's such a critical component. So at the LA County Board of Supervisors, we are focused on the whole spectrum, and we are really, our office is working on that piece of getting above the line, the protection piece, the preservation for people who are housed, keeping them housed in quality, dignified housing that they can afford to their income levels. So with that, I'm gonna just move to close. Thank you again. Just thank you for those of you that we work more closely with, for picking up the phone, for calling for those representations, because it matters, it changes lives. And I know that sometimes I don't feel that in my work, and I imagine that some moments you all don't feel that in your work. But the calls, the being able to connect people and keep people housed is really critical and important and transformative work. So I just appreciate the work of every single one of you and all of your organizations, and thank you for having us, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the panel.
Good afternoon. I'm Ron Flagg, president of the Legal Services Corporation, and I want to thank all of you for being here today, and more importantly, for the work that you do every day to help this great community. I want to thank Antonia and Isela for their remarks. They've set the table quite effectively for the conversation we're about to have. In talking, Antonia referred to Los Angeles as the capital of homelessness, and we've talked a lot the last couple of days at our board meeting about evictions and homelessness and the importance of collaboration, whether we're dealing with disasters or the opioid epidemic, or as we're talking about today, evictions and homelessness. And it's clear that given the daunting size of the issues here and throughout the country, collaboration is a key. Today, across the country and here in Los Angeles, we face what obviously is an urgent and dire situation. With the termination of the pandemic protections for tenants, the eviction tsunami, which we feared really from the outset of the pandemic is now upon us. The rental assistance and moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent ended here in Los Angeles later than it did in many other places. It ended in March of this year. Rental debts were due as of August 1st for renters in the city of Los Angeles. And let me share some statistics, which for Angelenos probably will not be startling, but at least to my eyes and ears are quite remarkable. From February through August of this year, approximately 50,000 eviction notices were filed by landlords in the city of Los Angeles. 50,000. That would be 10% of the population of Washington, D.C. And of course, with evictions rising, we've seen an increase in homelessness. The two are connected. Data released in June of this year showed a 9% rise in homelessness on any given night, to the point that in Los Angeles County, on average, over 75,000 people experience homelessness on a given night. And there's been a 10% rise in the city of Los Angeles, obviously the largest component of Los Angeles County, but just in the city of Los Angeles alone on a given night, there's an estimated over 46,000 people experiencing homelessness. Of course, Los Angeles is not the only American city to struggle with housing shortages and housing affordability and homelessness, but certainly the population and the numbers that I've just quoted to my Eastern ears and experience are quite startling. I was startled by the fact that 30% of the people experiencing homelessness in the United States are in California. Now, obviously it's not because you're unique in that people want to come to California for lots of attractive reasons, and so you've got more than your share of people who are experiencing homelessness. I do want to quote from the New York Times because it's a good segue to what we're going to be talking about. After talking about these things, it says, Los Angeles is a kind of large-scale test case for which solutions work and which solutions don't. And that's where today's panel comes in. We're going to explore how local collaboration is actually effectively helping low-income and historically marginalized Angelenos exercise their rights and stay housed. And our panel really, I think, illustrates some solutions that do work. We just need more resources and more help. But let me, without further ado, introduce them, starting with Cynthia Luna to my immediate left, who is the supervising attorney, Self-Help Legal Access Centers, part of Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. Next to her is Andrea Martinez, supervising attorney of the Schreiber Housing Project, part of the Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. Next to her is Alma Saeed, vice president of public partnerships at Liberty Hill Foundation. Next to Almas is Jeffrey Uno, managing attorney, Eviction Defense Center with LAFLA. And next to Jeff is Erica Ettinger, senior attorney, Systemic Impact Unit of Community Legal Aid of Southern California. And at the end of the table, if I got it right, Monica Marr is our director of pro bono for Community Legal Aid Southern California. Again, thank you for all of you being here. For starters, I'd like each of you to just briefly, in a sentence or so, share the window on evictions and homelessness that you bring to the conversation. And let's start with Erica.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. In my work, I try to identify problems that are facing our client community, and then I work to try to find solutions that really maximize the impact we can have and the resources of our organization.
Monica?
Hello, everyone. In my work as a pro bono director, I work to find creative and innovative solutions to helping folks avoid eviction through pro bono work in 2 counties and overcome the barrier of not only traffic but distance for those volunteers to help our community members.
Jeff?
My name is Jeffrey Uno. I'm the managing attorney of the Eviction Defense Center at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, LAFLA. I oversee our eviction defense and homelessness prevention team. We have about 45 or so staffers, all working out of the 6 courthouses in the county.
Thank you. Almas?
Hi everyone. I'm sure you're like, why is there a foundation at an LSE accessing justice event? I understand it's a reasonable question. So we, in partnership with many of you, and it's so good to see so many folks, and primarily with LAFLA's team, administer something called Stay Housed LA. It is the largest eviction prevention and defense program now in the country. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you. And Andrea?
So my vantage point is a little bit different. I'm just a short walk away down here at the Stanley Moss Courthouse, which is the largest trial court in the nation. It's also one of the busiest. It's also the home to 25% of the county's eviction filings. I also call it the Thunderdome. Our placement there, our placement there downtown gives us an eyes on the ground in terms of what is happening. We're able to see the devastation of the justice gap. So when folks have to go through this lightning fast process alone, we're able to see what happens when they're doing it in the dark. But we can also see the way the scales of justice tip back when both sides are represented, or at least at a minimum are empowered to represent themselves through access to critical service like information and resources.
Thank you. And Cynthia?
Hi, everyone. So for me and our partners who run the self-help centers, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, California, Community Legal Aid SoCal, and the court, we are often the starting point for individuals facing different types of legal issues, but more concerning and more recently has been the housing crisis. We see the challenges that they face across our extremely diverse and spread out county. So oftentimes we are the start and their introduction to legal services.
Well, you're a good person to start with, Cynthia, and let's stick with you. On Mayor Karen Bass's first day on the job, she declared homelessness an emergency. Eviction court, in a lot of ways, is the front lines of the homelessness crisis, and you oversee self-help legal access centers in courthouses across Los Angeles County where people are trying to halt an eviction or seeking help. For those of us in the audience who are not familiar with those courthouses, what do you see? What would we see if we were there?
I think you need to take a step back and think of the person who's coming in and who is first being introduced to evictions. Majority of the population, they don't know the terminology of unlawful detainer. They don't know what an eviction is. They don't know what a notice means. So oftentimes they're coming in scared with misconceptions, with rumors, my neighbor said this, my landlord told me this, and they may get a notice, they may get a courtesy letter from the court, and they're just confused and scared because it's extremely frightening for someone who is concerned that they may not have a place to live in 3 days, because that's what they think a 3-day notice is. Or they think that their sheriff is going to come and lock them out within a few days. So oftentimes they come to the courthouse, and fortunately, because the self-help centers have been there for such a long time, they have been a trusted resource in the community, and they know it's a place where they can come and ask questions. So the most important thing consistently throughout their entire experience is just education, educating the community, triaging their situations, figuring out where they are, and hopefully, because the vast majority of them qualify for legal aid, is connecting them to all these great programs that exist. Many of the times, they didn't even know that it existed. Many were fearful that they would have to face eviction and go to court against, attorneys and landlords by themselves. But it brings them a sense of relief to know where they are. A lot of the times we're able to educate them and assist them with their answers and then connect them to additional resources. And we've been that safety net for over 20 years and continue to be that safety net because the reality is there's such a high demand, and especially with the pandemic, it only increased significantly the demand for housing help that is needed out there, that For some, unfortunately, they won't get the opportunity to get the additional legal advice and representation that a lot of these services can provide. But honestly, the relief that you see in people's faces just by better understanding their situations empowers many of them. Empowers them to represent themselves, empowers them to face the challenges that they're facing, and many of them successfully do it on their own, which is very inspiring.
Thank you for reminding us to think of the individual faces of these people. When I talk about 50,000 people getting eviction notices or 75,000 people each night experiencing homelessness, we can sometimes be numbed by those numbers and forget about that each one of those people is really facing an almost indescribable tragedy, and to be reminded of that is, I think, really important. Jeff, let's talk to you or hear from you. We talked about the 50,000 eviction notices, and if we want to do something about homelessness, one component of this multi-pronged approach must involve preventing people from losing their homes in the first place. And LAFLA, along with other legal service providers, social service providers, are part of citywide initiatives. Two of them are We Are LA and Stay Housed LA. We've heard about both of them throughout the day, and they are designed to help tenants navigate and prevent eviction. Can you tell us more about those efforts, what benefits they're having, both to the justice system and to the legal aid community, most importantly, the people they're designed to serve?
Yes, thank you, Ron. So Stay Housed LA is a collaborative of about 10 legal service providers and over a dozen community-based organizations, right, out in the community, supporting and helping each other, right, in this endeavor. LAFLA has the privilege to be the lead agency along with our allies at Liberty Hill to help us administer things through the program. It arose really out of advocacy efforts, this program beginning in about 2018, where there was a lot of push towards a renter's right to counsel in Los Angeles County. Back then, almost a dream, to be completely honest with you folks who have probably been there and heard of it, in this room. But we came to closer and closer to a reality, right? Through the Stay Housed LA CBOs, we provide our outreach to the tenants via phone, text, and in person. They provide those, very important tenant navigations to help tenants through their housing crisis. Of course, in tandem, like I said, with, the legal services providers, right? About, getting out there for the workshops, about the tenants' rights, and even some of these clinics, right, on a one-to-one basis to give more information to those folks out there, right? And again, it just doesn't stop there, right? The LSPs provide full scope, right, eviction defense services, right, for those who qualify, along with limited scope proper assistance, again with, those workshop and clinics. And of course, our case management services, right, to support the clients with some of the non-legal things out there. What do you mean? Rental assistance, housing navigation, those types of critical services that, to be completely honest with you, they drive legal, right? Because you have money to perhaps work with a landlord, right, in order to get the rent paid and so forth. So as a business decision, right, it makes sense. Things like that are all part of the Stay Housed LA funding. We are happy to announce that over the next 2023-24 cycle, $31 million have been allocated by the city and county. And of course, we have additional funds from federal, state, and local funding, and including private foundation funding, right, in this endeavor to provide a right to counsel for all the tenants who are eligible, again, completely for free, right? Now, this doesn't happen overnight, obviously, to provide all of this legal representation to all the tenants out there. We are on a 6-year phase-in plan, right, over the next 6 years to bring in about 400 attorneys, again, to meet this need. So again, with collaboration being the key, we have to work on an attorney pipeline to provide, right, the new folks, the new attorneys, the new staffers, law students, and so forth through stipends and graduate fellowships, right, so that we can go ahead and provide these services. Currently this year, we are proud to announce that we have 20 postgraduate fellows who just joined us this last fall, who are waiting for more results in a little over a month. So fingers crossed for them that they come in, right? Yes, give our hand to our postgraduate fellows. Will hopefully be joining us in what we call the fight, right? But in the end though, right, again, I can't stress this enough, and I think this is the theme, is collaboration is key. We are privileged to have this opportunity to bring these much needed services to the tenants in the County of Los Angeles, but it will still continue to be a fight, to be a challenge, right? To bring these folks in, to have them hired and trained and ready to go ahead and take on this remarkable work. So we're thrilled at the variety of collaborative and creative thinking that we have received and the support from the Mayor's Fund, We Are LA, and so forth in order to get us to that goal.
Thank you. Almas, I had no doubt as to why we should have invited you, and I'm glad you're here. In July, the County Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a motion to take the first step toward creating a program that would provide free attorneys to tenants in danger of losing their homes in the unincorporated areas within LA County. And this complements the protections enacted by the LA City Council as well as Stay Housed LA, which Jeff just described. Now, that sort of policy win doesn't just transpire overnight or through osmosis, and it involves advocacy by local advocates and community organizations like those supported by your program, Liberty Hill Foundation. Can you tell us about how community organizing and activism is related to these developments and really undergirds them, and what other policy change momentum is building?
Oh yeah, my absolute favorite topic. I am an eviction attorney by training, both on the defense side and in terms of habitability cases. I've actually worked for most of the organizations in this room. First as a Shriver attorney, which you're going to hear about in a minute if you're not familiar with that program, and more recently as a Stay Housed LA attorney. In between, I did other things. I learned how to be a community organizer because I went to an amazing law school in LA called UCLA. I did not learn how to organize a community to advocate and ensure that structural change happened for the betterment of a community. So what do I mean by that? Lawyers are often taught to organize for a particular case. It's important work, especially if you have a particular end. Community organizing is a little bit different. We go out into the community, we ensure that we get people to a table to understand both what their rights are, what changes they want to see that are policy driven and structural. That's what makes Stay Housed LA super unique. The community-based organizations that are a part of the total program, they're not services-driven organizations. They are purposefully grassroots, often civil rights organizations, some of which didn't know shit about housing before they were invited to be a part of Stay Housed LA. Excuse my language. I know where I am. The community-based organizations that partner with LSPs in LA are really trying to make a difference and a dent in what you heard from Isela in particular about preservation and protection, especially those two things, but also making production accessible in communities where housing is just really not available or incredibly expensive. So the 12 organizations that work with Stay Housed LA are all over LA County. They are paired with an LSP, but that's not why they're in the program. They're in the program to ensure that they are talking to community, building their lists, activating folks around critical policy issues that will eventually be very critical to a lawyer's work with a client. But laws are only as good as people knowing that they exist, knowing that they are protected. And that is what makes Stay Housed LA so incredibly unique, and why I'm in this kind of weird role in administering it. So the Right to Counsel coalition, the power behind it, was initially envisioned by community-based organizations that are led by tenant leaders who were deeply impacted by housing instability, by displacement, by gentrification, by the rapidly rising costs of housing in a city that is market-driven, where policy choices are often made because of the market and often because of a real estate lobby that is louder than our clients and the people that we work with and represent. And that inequity drives the law. We know that. That's not hopefully controversial. If it is, then you can talk to Isela and I after this panel. Housing is a human right. I hope that people are comfortable with that statement. I am in spaces where people are really not. So how we ensure that narrative and kind of communications change is also a critical part of how we are talking about Stay Housed in the community. So what do the CBOs do? The CBOs do phone banking, texting, they go door to door. That's stuff that canvassers are used to. Like the organizations that are part of Stay Housed LA have always done that. Here's what they've had to become experts in the last 4 years. Running Know Your Rights workshops in partnership with many of you, many of the LSPs in LA County, learning how to work with individual people to navigate them through the most complex housing system, I would argue, in the country at the moment, largely because of a lack of housing and because of its expense. They also run clinics. Some of you staff those clinics. I'm calling you like, please come Saturday. Roberta, you know what I'm talking about. And they are all-day clinics where the organizers ensure people come into the room, they run these workshops, and then they see lawyers at the end. The impact of this work as we enter our 4th year is astounding because of a combination of everything from website ads, in some instances where we got support for this, billboards, as well as like phone banking and texting. We've reached 1.1 million people through the public awareness campaign alone. That is astounding. It is a publicly invested program. Like, we use public dollars to do this. There are tons of restrictions to these dollars. But to have 1.1 million people who are like aware of the program, or there's been some communication with them, is unprecedented. 200,000 people have gone through Know Your Rights workshops. Here's why this is really important. Sometimes in the workshops, we're able to stem the flow to the lawyers themselves, right? Like, we can maybe address something through the Know Your Rights piece or through the tenant navigation piece. In that sense, we have a lot in common with the self-help programs that you're hearing about on this panel. We do not do this work alone. Look at the size of this panel. It is taking everyone in this room to stem the tide of the emergency that we're dealing with, not just in the city of LA, but in the entire county. 3 weeks ago, I ran a clinic in the Antelope Valley. People who came to the clinic did not even know that unincorporated LA had any tenant protection at all. It's a different moment, and I'm hopeful that we can rise to meet the occasion. I'm sure there's a lot more that I was supposed to say. 4 minutes is short.
Yeah. I told you it was a good thing she was here. Andrea, Stay Housed LA is certainly notable for the number of stakeholders at the table, but it's not the first time that legal aid groups in Los Angeles County have collaborated on housing instability and eviction prevention. Can you tell us more about collaboration through the lens of the Shriver housing project, and what is the project and what has its impact been? Because I think you have some data about the effect of your program on keeping people in their homes.
So I am Andrea Martinez again, and I'm the supervising attorney for Shriver, but I am going to take you on a little historical journey real quick and tell you where we came from and what we come about. So the Sargent Shriver Civil Counsel Act was signed by the governor back in 2009, right? And it was to expand access to attorneys where basic human rights were at risk, so things like housing, right? So NLSLA partnered with 3 other agencies, 3 prominent agencies of Los Angeles County, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, Public Counsel, and Inner City Law Center, to put together a program, and it was going to be an eviction defense program based out of the Stanley Moss Courthouse. And it was going to be the largest of these 7 pilot programs. And by the way, today we're still the largest of more than 7, but we're still the largest. So there was one key idea that was behind this unparalleled collaboration, right, in eviction defense. It was to build a program that provides a model for comprehensive, high-quality services for low-income litigants that are at risk of losing their housing, right? So people on the verge of homelessness, right, which is the crisis that we're talking about now. Our project was transformative in what it was able to achieve, not just only as a collaboration, but just in terms of what it was able to do with this pilot program, right? The data, which they collect a ton of it, this was just a glorified science project to a certain extent. And it was supposed to sunset, the funding was supposed to sunset after a few years, right? But they determined from the numbers what we already knew to be true, which was when both sides are represented, the results tend to be a little bit different and things kind of even out, right? So because we had collected so much data, because we had seen so many people, because we were able to put the proof right in front of them, the governor made this program permanent, and it still funds us now and funds many more other programs throughout the state. Again, this was a step towards right to counsel. It's a step towards other large-scale collaborations like the Mammoth, which is Stay Housed LA, right? Shriver was that first big step, not only to prove to funders that these types of collaborations could work, but also just like you do in sports, right? Sometimes you got to learn to win. So it was teaching the agencies as well that this kind of thing in eviction defense could be possible and be successful. The original model focused on solely on representation, right? Getting people connected with an attorney and having them represented in their case. But we quickly realized that that wasn't going to have the big impact that we needed it to have, right? For multiple reasons. So we pivoted. We used the information and the tools and the lessons that we had learned 20 years before with self-help legal access centers. And we opened a housing-focused self-help center at the Stanley Moss Courthouse, right? Only housing, nothing else, just housing, right? By doing that, we're able to cast a wide net, right? We can connect and touch more people, and by doing so, just on the representation level, we're able to then find more of those individuals that qualify for our services and get them connected with attorneys so they can get that assistance that they greatly need. On the other side of that, though, is the reality that we all know to be true. You can't take every kitten home, right? There is more need than there is, even though I really try, guys, right? I really do. There's more, right? There's more need than there is resources available to deal with that right now, right? And maybe that won't be the reality in the future, but right now that's exactly where we are, and that's exactly where we were then. So a self-help center allows us to still assist people, and why do we go to Stanley Moss? Because that's where the people are, right? That's where it's happening at. So we're able to assist them at least with something, because it's better to give somebody a flashlight in the dark to kind of go through the process and wonder and figure it out than it is to have them get nothing at all and then have to try and do this alone, right? So the self-help center allows us to do kind of both things. So I see our program as somewhat of a hybrid, right? Because we're not just a self-help center and we're not just representation, right? We do both, and they complement each other in a way that allows us to make a bigger impact on the community and a bigger impact in this fight. Again, another key component to our project, which isn't, again, the collaboration that we have with the partners is huge because they allows us to take from them expertise and overcome things like conflict. There's great strength with teaming up with the legal service providers that we have teamed up with, right? But it's also our partnership with the court, right? And it goes beyond just us being placed within Stanley Moss Courthouse. We're more than just a tenant there, right? I'm more than just somebody that's annoyingly down the hallway from small claims that has people kind of spilling into their room, right? Our partnership with them actually works both ways. They give us access that allows us to effectively and efficiently assist our litigants in an area of law where every minute can count sometimes, right? So not only that, the information flows back and forth. And so we're able to point out to them blind spots that they might not be aware of, right? Because of our placement on the ground, because of our work both in the courtrooms with the partner agencies and our own full scope attorneys, and our placement in the self-help center, we're able to provide them with that insight that they might not realize until maybe a little problem becomes a huge problem for them down the road, right? And what that ultimately does, that flow of information back and forth, allows them to make adjustments to their operations and also will improve those services that they provide to people, ultimately improving access to the courts that folks have, right? So again, it's not just the collaboration that we have with the legal service providers, it's also that key component of that partnership that we have with the court. Shriver's model of large-scale collaboration in eviction defense opened the door for other programs, like I said, right? Programs like Stay Housed LA. But we're not, to say that we are the first major collaboration would be false, right? We also stand on the shoulders of giants. There were programs that came before us that were other collaborations, maybe in other areas, like 20 years ago with the self-help legal access centers, right? Prior to Shriver, there was HRHP, which I can never remember what their acronym means, but it was homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, I believe. But it was super innovative because it included social workers that were a part of it. That was something new for that type as well, right? So all of these pieces, all of this stuff along the way, we had lessons learned and innovations and things that we were able to take as Shriver and build upon and are continuing to do so, right? We're still learning lessons today that we're sharing amongst each other. NLS LA, as the lead of Shriver, has LAFLA as a partner, which is also the lead of Stay Housed LA, right? We're able to share that information and best practices and what's happening on the ground and make those adjustments. And so you don't have to always reinvent the wheel, right? Or figure out that the square wheel doesn't work, right? Because somebody can already tell you that, hey, this didn't really work out for us. And so you're able to take that, improve upon it, and then grow it going forward, right? There are programs that have been yet to be created that will take what we have learned and what we have done and what they're doing now and what we're doing now and what other people are doing. They're going to put their own spin on it and they're going to make it work for them. And it's going to be just another way to come at this problem. And I think that's going to be a really key component as we move forward, is to look to find ways to work together, not just program to program, right? Because we've figured that out, like legal service provider to legal service provider, community-based organization, including that. Now we have to think bigger, right? Because this problem is so big that it's not going to be something that one agency or one program, no matter how large, is going to be able to tackle. So how do we now fill in those gaps between and complement each other between large-scale collaboration and large-scale collaboration, right? Like Shriver just recently started collaborating with Stay Housed LA on certain things because there are folks that will come to us that won't qualify for Shriver because of our requirements. Everybody is familiar with all of their, their requirements and their restraints, right? But I don't want to just turn them away. They still qualify for Stay Housed LA. So I want to make sure that we get them connected over there to Stay Housed LA. And that's going to be like that next key component for everybody going forward is that type of collaboration. Taking those big networks that we've all gotten, the strength of the group, and just improving upon that and continuing to find these innovative solutions. Because honestly, that's the only way we're going to be able to do this, is if we come at it from really all angles.
Thank you so much. Erica, we've heard a lot about really different sorts of efforts at helping individuals with getting counsel, self-help, a lot of different approaches. But another key component and another key role that legal aid programs and their partners play is identifying case trends and then trying to resolve underlying systemic issues. And that's really your day job. How have you been able to strengthen tenant protections and reduce evictions taking systemic approaches?
Thanks. As a senior attorney in the Systemic Impact Unit at Community Legal Aid SoCal, I work really closely with the subject matter experts at our organization, including eviction defense attorneys, to identify those case trends and problems that are facing our client community and try to devise solutions to those problems. So sometimes that requires taking an informal approach, such as negotiating or drafting a letter. Sometimes it requires litigation. We've had success, particularly in the eviction defense realm, of using the strategy of taking or defending an appeal, and then when the decision is favorable, seeking publication of that decision so that it can be relied on by other advocates in that space. We had a recent success out of the appellate division of the Orange County Superior Court that vindicated tenants' rights under the Tenant Protection Act, and we were able to get that decision published. And since then, our advocates have been able to rely on that decision to successfully defend against eviction in their cases. But in addition to our eviction defense work, We also try to address factors that contribute to eviction, including affordable housing and access to benefits. If somebody can't afford their rent, or if somebody suddenly loses their benefits because they're wrongfully terminated, it puts them at risk of eviction really fast. They get destabilized. So focusing on these factors are important. So just to touch a little bit on my affordable housing work, I know that it's not going to be any shock to anyone in this room that there's an affordability crisis in California when it comes to housing. California has passed a lot of laws that are aimed at trying to get at this problem. Some of these laws include laws that require local governments to plan for affordable housing in their local planning documents. And we know from our work that this is important. When local governments plan for affordable housing, more affordable housing gets built. But when they're not planning for it, less affordable housing gets built, and this puts people at risk of displacement and eviction and homelessness. So we've done a lot of advocacy in this space, including representing plaintiffs, representing interveners, and drafting amicus briefs. And we've been successful in getting these laws upheld and getting cities to come back into compliance with their legal obligations and plan for affordable housing. What has been critical to our success in this space has been our partnership with pro bono law firms, as well as with other legal aid associations in Orange County and in Los Angeles. Like I said, every city has to plan for this affordable housing in their local planning documents. And there's a lot of cities in Southern California. So by partnering together and sharing resources, sharing information and successful strategies, we've really been able to maximize the impact that we can have in this space.
Thanks so much. Monica, thanks for your patience. Right to counsel laws are great. The challenge often is to find enough counsel to staff those programs to fully support or fully meet the needs of LA County. Would need hundreds of additional lawyers, and we know how hard our grantees have to work to attract and retain great lawyers. But pro bono lawyers are one source of supplement to staff attorneys and are critical to reducing the number of evictions and judgments in the areas you serve in Southeast Los Angeles County and Orange County. How does your program work, and what lessons learned can you pass on to others?
Yeah, hi. So Project Hope works by being completely remote. It's a completely remote eviction defense clinic where we complete answers to evictions, obviously. And it really grew out of the pandemic and a PBIF transformation grant. So kind of the culmination of these two things coming together really helped us think outside of the box. We had to come up with a new model to help our clients and help this tsunami that we knew was coming of evictions. So typically the model for pro bono work is we have our first level folks, all of our LSO folks, our staff attorneys doing answers and like the basic level of intake work. Then we place cases, right? We might call pro bono attorneys, ask them to take a case. Then the highest level would be like our, working with Erica's team and, finding a big firm to do co-counsel on impact litigation. And really during the pandemic, we kind of flipped this model. So we started asking attorneys, law students, folks that were recently barred to help us with that entry level, with which people weren't normally doing, like the work that our staff attorneys were doing day in and day out. And this kind of freed up our staff attorneys to actually represent on cases. So they were in court more. We have almost 90% of all of our UD answers completed by pro bono volunteers. So for us, that's huge. We have an extremely high number of almost everyone coming through this clinic. And then those cases can go back to case review, and our attorneys can kind of look at them and say, now that we have more capacity, which cases can we represent on? Which cases can we help with? And then sometimes these volunteer attorneys, can also work on the bigger cases, the higher impact, systemic cases. But we don't require that of them. They're able to come in and really do a short, limited scope kind of foray into pro bono work and see if it's right for them. So this model of kind of reversing it and allowing, our staff attorneys to get into court more and work directly with the clients where they really connect with them. All of us know that legal aid attorneys are great with clients, and sometimes they need to be there when the pro bono attorneys are also interacting to make it a really great experience. So this kind of takes that model and changes it just slightly and really works well. And we have, for us, different levels of engagement for pro bonos and for law students and other folks along the way. So having those different levels of engagement has really helped us come at the problem from multiple angles of having still our entry level and then, our co-counsel and folks that might be willing to go in and represent a case or take an appeal. And really what we're doing with this work is building a pipeline of attorneys. I heard my colleague Jeff talk about, Stay Housed LA, and so we have all this huge need and actually, funding to hire attorneys that don't yet exist. And so we really need to grow the pipeline of folks that are willing to do eviction defense work. And we do that by working with our partners from the law schools, bringing in law students to these clinics, exposing new attorneys, working with folks at law firms and other folks that maybe are looking to go out on their own and, set up practice as independent attorney. They just might want to be a solo practitioner. They're ready to do that. This is a way they can learn how to do that, help us, and then go out into the world and also bring that knowledge to our community. So we're working on the pipeline, we're helping our clients and hopefully building a passion among folks to be able to see what it's like for someone to just live paycheck to paycheck and who these people really are. Because once I work with a lot of firm attorneys and I hear them say, wow, like I didn't realize how easy it was to become homeless, that someone can lose their home just based on any number of circumstances. And you always think about that, but when you're actually talking to someone on the phone, it can really hit home and build one more advocate for this work. Because I think that what all of our colleagues here today kind of touched on was that it takes a multi-pronged approach to solve this issue, and we're not going to do it overnight. So pulling in pro bono attorneys and pro bono law students and newly barred folks and sometimes even folks in other jurisdictions really can just help us in the meantime while we're working on all these systemic kind of ways to solve the problem and build housing. So that is what we're doing, and we're doing it in both counties. So the exciting part about this work is it's completely remote, which you all know is extremely important for people just to get from one place in LA to the other. I mean, it's just takes a long time to go down the street in downtown. And so this has been an approach that really draws in folks in a way that meets them where they're at and helps clients where they're at. I don't think for us, we see us going back to the way we used to do business. We're able to meet clients where they're at their jobs. They can walk out, take a phone call, work on their situation without having to take any time off work when they don't have time to take off work. So in addition to the pro bono attorneys, this is really client-centered, and that's what we're doing. And we hope that other regions can learn from it and will hopefully spread the model. So.
Thank you, Monica. So we've obviously covered an enormous amount of ground today, which is appropriate given the daunting nature of the problem we're trying to deal with. Speaking of daunting, I'd like each of you to take less than a minute and summarize one thing you'd like our audience to take away in dealing with this problem. And Jeff, let's start with you.
Can't stress enough collaboration and creative thinking to help us address this problem on all levels, all spaces, all places, all ideas welcome, all collaboration welcome.
Almas?
1 minute. It's hard, and I'm detracting from my own time. So I think that ensuring that your practice or your institution is deeply connected to community in some way is something that I really can't emphasize enough. I wasn't taught this as a lawyer. I had to learn how to do it in the field. And I know now it's a different time because I'm an old lady. And there are spaces in law schools that are doing, relative to where I was, that are doing that. But one thing that I implore upon you, if you're not familiar with State House, is to really appreciate how unique this collaboration is. When I was in housing as a courtroom lawyer, it was very rare to sit in a planning space, in a strategy space with a local CBO. They might have asked me to staff a clinic or support on a case, but to sit and strategize on a different future for housing takes everyone in this room plus a bunch of people who are not here. So as an institution, I ask that you bring in, if not tenant voices, then a deep relationship with a community-based organization that's connected to folks on the ground.
Almas, I know old, and you're not old.
Well, every year that changes.
Let's see, Erica.
Well, I would stress, I think what's been a theme of this panel is that a multi-pronged and collaborative approach is critical in order to help people remain housed.
Monica?
I would say I love pipeline work. So the takeaway would be we need to focus on the pipeline of eviction defense attorneys. And, I'm proud to say that out of this clinic, we've hired 3 of our volunteers, and they're now housing attorneys practicing in our organization. And I actually see one more that's practicing with another organization, so I'll claim that person too, Roberta. So that's 4 in this room. And that's just out of the first 2 years of this clinic. So I think the pipeline is extremely important, and we can't forget about our colleagues at the law schools and law firms, and really just think about what Antonia said earlier about bringing in the private sector as well.
Cynthia, we haven't heard from you in about 40 minutes.
Please do not underestimate the power of education for the community at large, but how education can really help the mental health of the individual. I remember months ago, as protections were winding down, a mom coming and being seriously concerned. Her concern was, can I safely take out my holiday decorations and decorate, or should I just keep them in storage because the sheriffs are going to come in a week? And just the relief in knowing how much time she had was just a burden off her shoulders. So education is key.
Thank you. Andrea, last word.
All right. Buckle up. So I think it's just going to kind of go back to the things that we've kind of talked about today, a lot of these same themes, right? Which, if you want to go fast, right, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go together. And I think that that's something that we have to keep in mind the entire time with whatever we're doing, right? That the only way forward through this thing is going to be together. Again, there is no one agency, one legal service provider, one program, one approach that is going to really be able to tackle this thing. It's just too big. The enemy is too dynamic, and it's too widespread, right? We're basically at a critical point where all hands are on deck, and it's going to take all of us. It's going to take everybody up here on this stage, all of their staff, and all of you out there, and people that are watching, and people that are not here, like Alma said. Right? It's going to take everybody, community-based service organizations, mental health service providers, cities, governments, funders, right? Especially the funders. It's going to take all of that coming together and working to complement each other and not compete, right? And instead of focusing on building just a really awesome program, looking at the bigger problem that we need to try and solve, right? And what we need to do and what steps need to be taken in order for us to move the needle and continue to go forward. So, we got to come at this thing from all angles, and I think the only way we can do it is if we do it together, and it really is going to take all of us.
So please join me in thanking our panel.
I'm Kate Marr. I am the proud colleague of 2 of the panelists, Monica and Erica, and I'm also the executive director of Community Legal Aid SoCal, serving Southeast Los Angeles and Orange County. And it is my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Conway Collis is the president and CEO of the Mayor's Fund for Los Angeles, a role he assumed this spring. Between 2013 and 2021, Conway served as the founding president and CEO of Grace End Child Poverty California, where he led the development and implementation of a statewide plan that resulted in more than 290,000 California children and families moving out of poverty between 2019 and 2020. Conway's commitment to public service and poverty elimination is longstanding. Previously, he was counsel on the U.S. Senate Committee on Labor and Public Welfare, working on domestic social programs. He was the founding board chair of the National Foster Youth Institute from 2012 to 2021, co-chaired the California Lifting Children and Families Out of Poverty Task Force, and chaired the State Senate Bipartisan Task Force on Homelessness. Thank you for joining us today, Conway.
Kate, thank you. Thank you very much, both for your long service with legal services and now with community legal services. And John Levy, I've got to thank you for reaching out, and to all of you for the chance to talk a little bit. I've got to tell you that speaking to legal service today is kind of a full circle for me, because everything I've done over the last 50 years or so is because I was not hired by CRLA out of law school, which is my dream job. I did end up, as Kate mentioned, as a counsel on U.S. Senate Labor and Public Welfare Committee, and that's relevant to legal services because the committee was the committee of jurisdiction over the confirmation of the first board of directors for the Legal Services Corporation and confirmation of the first president of Legal Services. And I ended up as the lead staffer on that process. And Senator Alan Cranston from California, Ted Kennedy, Walter Mondale, Jacob Javits, the folks that had been deeply committed to legal services for years, helped to form the corporation in order to protect legal services and ensure its continuity. I got to mention one thing about that, which I think takes us to today, and that is that at the time, another member of the committee was known as the most conservative member of the United States Senate at that time. He was the former governor of Nevada, Paul Laxalt, Reagan's best friend in the Senate, been sued many times by legal services in Nevada and had a great deal of antipathy because of that. And think about this happening today. One person who was nominated for the board of legal services had been Reagan's attorney to cut CRLA, a lifetime opponent of legal services, and was obviously on the board to do some damage. And he became the first person to not be confirmed by the committee. And Laxalt actually looked at the evidence, looked at it in a lawyer-like way, and voted against the guy. And then he supported increased appropriations for legal services. I just mention that because think about what it's like today and how much the world has changed. But one thing that hasn't changed is the importance of legal services and the dedication of legal service attorneys. That's been a constant for all of these years. And the question now is, and I think you heard about it from this wonderful panel, is how do we maximize that impact? How do we maximize the impact of legal services? Because there is a shortage. And as much as we may want and all support vehemently right to counsel, the fact is we're nowhere close to that. There's currently an attorney in Los Angeles available for about 10% of the people who have been served with a notice of eviction. So how do we maximize the impact? And the answer, and again, you've heard a lot of it, is for legal services to be part of a coordinated system, to work together with with outreach, with case management, with referral to legal services, to everyone working together, and also to look for ways that things can be done that perhaps don't require an attorney. So when Mayor Bass took office and wanted to focus, as she must, on addressing homelessness, her homeless plan is essentially 3 parts. It's prevention, moving people from the streets into temporary and permanent housing, and access to legal services to prevent evictions wherever possible. And you've heard a lot about Stay Housed. Stay Housed is an incredibly crucial program formed by the Board of Supervisors in the previous mayoral administration, and everything we do is built on this enormous foundation that Stay Housed has in place. So the Mayor's Fund is, we're an independent 501c3, but we're the Mayor's Fund. And the mayor is formally our formal advisor to our board. And she wanted us to put in place something that would be built upon this enormous foundation of Stay Housed, in a sense to stand on their shoulders. And so we formed We Are LA. And We Are LA is, first of all, outreach. And it's outreach by community members. And it's formed in terms of how we target the outreach. And the last 3 months, there's been outreach, which we define as an actual discussion with someone, to just over 170,000 at-risk Angelenos. And when someone is identified, and they're identified as Almas indicated, in some of the same ways of phone calling and door knocking, and then we also do a good deal of outreach directly to community centers and community groups and community meetings and churches, and even working the Department of Motor Vehicle lines in every way where people are gathered. And the outreach is determined by a combination of, we get lists directly from the Superior Court on each of the zip codes where eviction filings have taken place over the last week. And the city receives actual and able to report actual addresses. Now, they're not the names, they're not the apartment numbers, but the addresses. And so we merge the addresses, we compare them to where the last week there have been the most number of filings, and we compare those two. And then once a person has indicated they do need help, they're referred directly, person to person, to a caseworker. Caseworker can be a promotora, it can be a benefit navigator at a health center, it could be a social work student who's working part-time on this. But the key to the casework, and that's really the key to the whole process, is that it's based on a promotora or promised neighborhood model. And what that means is there's an assessment of the person, a tenant, for what they need, and all of the federal, state, or local programs that they may be eligible for. And then to directly sign up that person, not say, here's a website or go do this, but directly work with a person to actually get them signed up. And that's crucial, because the evidence is, and our experience is, people are leaving as much as $3,000 a month on the table in benefits they're already entitled to, but didn't know about, or afraid to apply for, don't know how to apply. And so that piece is crucial, because that's the difference between being able to pay rent and not. The other thing that the caseworkers are doing through new tools that are available is when there's been a UD filing, they're able to actually file the answer with the court, working with the person. It doesn't actually take an attorney. Actually, Legal Aid Foundation has provided the training, or the tools for the training, so that the caseworkers can do that directly. But then, of course, at some point, folks need a lawyer. And the problem is the courts analyzed that there'll be about 35,000 evictions in the city of LA this year. Now, Mayor Bass will be successful in moving people from the streets into housing. She will get, I think, to over 20,000 this year. It's an enormous effort. But that still means that unless we stem the flow of people being evicted, we're always going to be falling behind. So the lawyer for 10% of the people who are served with a notice of eviction. So what that means is that we've also needed to focus on the recruitment of pro bono private attorneys. And the mayor has been extremely active in this. We've currently recruited just under 100 pro bono attorneys. We've got another meeting coming up for the mayor to recruit directly people. And LAFLA has provided a lot of the training as part of those sessions and handled all of the administration. We're providing a little over $1 million led by LAFLA, also to Neighborhood Legal Aid, and then a couple of non-legal service entities, Betzedek and Inner-City Law Center, to actually provide the direction and coordination for the pro bono attorneys. And it's a way that we think will about double the number of attorney hours that are available to serve people in need. So this is all a start, and it's a very good model. It's a model that needs to be replicated. The coordination between outreach, full scope casework, and expanded access to legal services through having legal services coordinate the availability of pro bono attorneys. So I just want to leave you with, I think, two thoughts. The first is that what's been shown in LA through the Foundation of Stay Housed, through the ways that We Are LA has built on that, it's provided a model that ought to be replicated across the country where it doesn't currently exist. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I think, I close with a thank you to legal services attorneys. There's a quote from St. Francis of Assisi, a Catholic saint, but I always thought that his words have meaning for folks of any religion or none at all. He said, preach the gospel, use words if necessary. Well, lawyers use lots of words, but the fact is, for legal services attorneys, I think that what you do is live your belief in the greater good. And for that, I thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
So thank you, Conway, for your inspiring words and for your ongoing commitment and partnership and dedication to this cause. So my name is John Malcolm. I'm a member of LSC's Board of Directors, and it's now my privilege to introduce some leaders from Public Counsel who will be joining us for our next discussion. Public Counsel is a nonprofit public interest law firm that is dedicated to advancing civil rights and racial and economic justice, as well as amplifying the power of their clients through comprehensive legal advocacy. It's the largest provider of pro bono legal services in the United States. That's pretty impressive. And also part of the collaborative initiative Stay Housed LA, providing residents of Los Angeles County with information and resources to avoid evictions. Dan Klibner, who's going to be moderating the next discussion, is a partner at Sidley Austin. He is a current board member and past chairman of the board at Public Counsel. Joining him will be Silvana Naguib, who is the directing attorney of the Homelessness Prevention Law Project, which is affiliated with Public Counsel, and also Tanya Acker, who's a fellow board member of Public Counsel and the host of The Tanya Acker Show. Please join me in welcoming Dan, Silvana, and Tanya to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Are you still with us? Yes. Are you ready to talk equal access to justice? Yes. When I say equal, you say access? Equal? Access. Equal? Okay. Legal? Services. I knew you'd fall for that. All right, I'm Dan Klibner, and I am a former chairman of the Board of Public Counsel, also a partner at Sidley Austin and a friend of John Levy. And I think it's really the last thing that brings me here, but it's also the thing that I want to point out in terms of thanking John for his great service to the United States through his presidency of Legal Services Corporation. And I'm going to take a point of privilege here that, because I got this microphone, that you may not know this, but the chair is appointed by the President of the United States. And as that administration changes from time to time, so too the chair, except in John's case, where they kept him from one administration to another administration, and I think, and another administration again. And so whatever your politics are, John Levy's your man. So a word about the problem in the United States and how all of you and us are trying to address it. So I carry around with me, like I look like, the corporate guy, the private law firm partner. And there's more to that story than meets the eye. But for this purpose, I carry around with me a little card, and it was on the elevator of the office building going upstairs. And it must be true because it was on the elevator going upstairs. And it says 6 in 10 Americans don't have $500 saved. Nearly 6 in 10 Americans don't have enough savings to cover $500 or $1,000 unplanned expense, according to a report from Bankrate, and that's on CNN Money. So that appealed to me because it's CNN Money, but it also horrifies me. And so when you talk about becoming unhoused, and you say, how does that happen? And I've heard the panel before. It might start with the fact that nearly 6 in 10 Americans, and that means you don't have to go far. I tell this to my partners in the law firm. You don't have to go to Bakersfield and the Inland Empire. You can look down the corridors of your law firm, because there's 6 in 10 of us who don't have $500. And that means that if they lose their job, they probably lose their home. And they move to their car until it's refinanced. And then they're homeless. And in my world, the richest country in the world shouldn't have that kind of opening, that kind of story. And so it challenged me. When I graduated from law school, my parents said, even though you're going to be a corporate lawyer, you got to pursue justice. And they said, there's a proverb, it's justice, justice shalt thou pursue. And it sits in my office. It's always sat in every office I've had. And so my way of pursuing justice was to connect with an organization like yours, and in this case, like Public Counsel, which turns out to be the largest not-for-profit pro bono law firm in the country. And in some small way, lawyers like me and my partners can contribute. And it's not so small, because a law firm like Sidley Austin contributes in excess of $100 million a year in free legal services. It's $100 million a year in time in free legal services. It's hundreds of thousands of hours through a lot of people. So just before everybody, not in this room, but takes shots at the big private law firms, I want you to know that we are trying to do good as well, and we do it by partnering with folks like you, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Let me introduce to my left Tanya Acker, who's not only a board member of Public Counsel, but she's the next chairperson of the board of Public Counsel, and so that's why I think it's fitting that she's here. Tanya, I give you the mic.
Thank you, Dan. Just really quickly, I was introduced to Public Counsel in 1993 when I was a first-year summer associate at Irell and Manella. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm from you guys are from LA. I'm from Lakeview Terrace. So, like, if you're not from LA, you say you're from, I'm from LA. I'm from Lakeview Terrace. So if you're from the Valley, and so in 1993, we were still doing general relief. And here I was, like a first-year summer associate, making more money than I ever imagined somebody my age would make, and helping poor people who would not eat if that check wasn't processed, get that check. And that was when I was first introduced to our work. Much has been made about us being the largest provider of pro bono legal services, but we do that because of the 140 incredible staff we have on staff, like the superstar to our far right, Silvana Naguib. We also, don't be bashful, she's a star. She's gonna tell you all about it. And she's not bashful, by the way, she wins cases. And also through the Pro Bono Network that Dan will talk a little bit more about. I mean, we've really been able to accomplish incredible victories for our clients, both here in California and abroad because of that network. I think one thing that's really incredible about our approach is that between the direct services that we do and the broader impact work that we do, we really have a unified approach toward helping people. I mean, I heard a lot of talk about coordinated services. You know, there's one case that we recently just filed in federal court on behalf of a group of transition age foster youth who are being systematically denied the services that the state and federal government have mandated that they be denied. That case is being filed on behalf of a group of youth, but we discovered the problem because one of our direct services lawyers who used to run our children's rights program, I think now she's running Women and Girls, Rachel Stein, she noticed that a number of transition age foster youth, like they kept being evicted, like one after the other and after the other. And so it doesn't take much to extrapolate that there's a big picture problem when individuals keep coming through the door, exemplifying that problem. So our approach, you know, between the lawyers that we have on staff, between our volunteers, like we have thousands of volunteers, volunteer lawyers who are donating their time and their firm's time. We can both help those individual folks who come in the door. We provide incredible direct services to people who need them. And then that also helps us. It's really a part of the broader approach because all of these people have problems because of some of the larger systemic issues that we're also addressing. I think now is a good time to hear a little bit from Silvana. Dan, what do you think? I think it makes sense. Silvana's done a lot of work. She runs our homelessness prevention program, but I think she can also talk a bit more just about how we address our work and our clients and the like. Have at it.
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Silvana Naguib. Pronouns are she, her, as Tanya said. I work at Public Counsel. And I've done a lot of different things in my career. I've worked in several different cities, and I really like seeing how things are done differently in LA and this collaborative approach that we've been talking about today. And I see so many friendly faces in the audience. I look out and I see so many people that I know, and it's almost bringing tears to my eyes to be part of this community of fighters who are really fighting for a better future for our communities, and that we don't want Los Angeles to be a city that is just for rich people. And we want our clients to be able to stay in their homes and stay in the communities that they love and that they call their home. But what I want to talk about how Public Counsel fits into this and how I think about equal access to justice is that as much as I'm an optimist, I don't see in my lifetime a lawyer for every person who needs one. I hope we'll get there. We might even get there when it comes to eviction defense in the next 5 years, 10 years. I'm hopeful. I don't know, maybe 20. But that's just, all of our organizations do a lot of other things other than housing, right? And housing is sexy right now. There's money coming in. We're trying to make it sexy for the law students. But there's a lot of other areas of law that all of our organizations do and that Public Counsel does. And so what I think about is, how does all of what we do with direct services, and Public Counsel does it too, fit into a broader strategy of fundamentally changing our society, right? Thinking about, we can't use a sledgehammer to knock back every eviction that is filed. We just can't do it. There's too many. I mean, like Conway said, it's going to be 35,000, 40,000. That's just the city of LA. We're not even talking about the rest of the county or the rest of California. So what Public Counsel does is that we try to leverage our direct services expertise that we have from our small but mighty team of advocates that are doing eviction defense, that are doing immigrants' rights, that are doing, family law for transition age youth, right? All these different things that we do, and work together with our policy team, because we have a lot of people that just do policy, and our impact litigation team to think about how do we shape a better future for these communities. And so what we find ourselves doing, and what I'm so elated about and so happy that we can be part of serving this community with you all, is that we are working with our partners to say, okay, we've identified this issue, right? And we're gonna try to advocate as best we can in individual cases. But also, we need a change in the law. And so we have our policy people that are working with legislators, that are lobbying, that are working with coalitions to figure out, how does the law need to be changed? What new tenant protections do we need? How can we get those passed at the city, at the county, right? And y'all, as receiving Legal Services Corporation funding, somewhat restricted, right? In terms of lobbying, there's plenty of restrictions there. We don't have those restrictions because we don't receive Legal Services Corporation's money. So we love working with you all to say, okay, we're gonna do the things that maybe you all can't do. We're gonna represent undocumented folks. Send them to us. Right? That's part of what's so important about these coalitions and these collaborations, right? Maybe you don't have the freedom because of whatever funding you receive or kind of politically to sue the state of California. Okay, well, we're gonna do that because they totally mucked up the rent relief process, and we're gonna sue them, and we're gonna tell them they have to make it right and they have to follow the law. So we've taken a lot of what I think are really courageous actions in the last 5 years that combine the policy piece, right? Because we're part of trying to get, for example, trying to get the rent relief stuff passed in the state legislature. Then we realized, well, it's not working as planned. And we're trying to, work with the state and say, hey guys, there's some problems. Well, they're not moving fast enough, and people are getting evicted because they were promised rent relief and it's not coming, right? And their UD trial is coming up and they don't have the money, even though they thought they were going to. So we're gonna sue the state, and then we're gonna take that advocacy and the results back into our individual cases to try to advocate for our clients. So that I think of it as almost like a exponential expansion of how we can impact the way that things happen at the city, at the county, and at the state level. And obviously a lot of the work that we do in other projects has federal implications too, right? We do a lot of immigration work, which I know all of you, serve immigrant communities as well, and you always wrestle with these LSC restrictions that you have about serving clients that maybe don't have legal status. And so we're advocating for those folks as well and trying to think through how the policies and the funding and the practices can benefit them as well. So I really want to find ways to expand the reach of these impact cases that we're filing. And what we're seeing more in the last few years, like the case Tanya mentioned, is that we're filing these impact cases that are implicating 2, 3, 4 areas of law, right? We're talking about, like this case she mentioned, we're talking about housing, we're talking about transition age youth, we're talking about our impact litigation unit, we're talking about our Women and Girls Project, right? Because there's a lot of these transition age youth are young moms, right? And they're dealing with the impact of having been in the foster care system. So I'm really excited to see the way that this is moving forward, and I'm so excited to be working with all of you.
Can I just brag on one thing quickly? Silvana talked about expanding the work, and I think that's important, but I think that it's also important to recognize that folks like her and Dan have resulted in public counsel being able to serve last year over 10,000 clients, including 300 nonprofits. We achieved success in 91% of our cases, and we recovered over $75 million on behalf of our clients, and resulting savings from our clients. So this approach, it's not just theoretical. It's not just theoretical. We show up to fight and win.
And while we join you all in congratulating LSC on its 50th anniversary, we've been doing it longer. At Public Counsel, we've been doing that for 54 years this year. It was established in 1970 in response to actually government legislation saying, that you can't really serve poor people with legal services. And the response was a very innovative approach from the Beverly Hills Bar Association, the Los Angeles Bar Association, to create an organization like Public Counsel. The founder of it, Fred Nicholas, is still alive at 103. And sharp as a tack, by the way. So there's something about, maybe if you provide free legal services, you could live a long time.
We're all praying for that, Dan.
That's what it's about. Beyond housing, Public Counsel is impactful in immigration and took a leading role in the border separation cases, in literacy and education, children's rights and foster youth, veterans affairs, and a number of other projects. Maybe I'll ask you, Silvana, speaking on behalf of Public Counsel, is there another area besides the work we're doing around housing that you're particularly proud of?
Definitely. You know, there's so many things that come to mind. I'm so proud of our immigrants' rights team, which, you know, really partners very closely with our impact litigation team, which is called Opportunity Under Law, to file, you know, a number of lawsuits, you know, both during the Trump administration. Those lawsuits are continuing now on behalf of immigrants, you know, detained at the border, asylum policies, you know, so many different things that they have challenged and are continuing to challenge, you know, because those problems haven't gone away, even though we have a new president. And it's such a huge part of our work, and it's such a huge part of what informs everything we do at Public Counsel is serving immigrant communities in Los Angeles and making sure that their rights are vindicated. And that's another, you know, huge issue where there's not nearly enough legal services to serve everyone. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention, you know, one thing that we're really proud of and we talk about a lot at Public Counsel is incorporating pro bono into our work. And that's why I was so glad that Conway was here. And, you know, there's this great effort to think about how can we bring pro bono, how can we bring more pro bono into housing, you know, always thinking about how pro bono work impacts our work, because, you know, these impact cases that we file, we really can't do it without the pro bono. We really can't. It's too much work. It takes too many hours. We don't have enough people. And the large law firms have devoted a lot of time and money to helping us litigate many of these major impact cases, both in the housing space, also in the immigration space, but really that we're able to leverage these resources to challenge these governmental entities sometimes. You know, we've sued the federal government, we've sued the state, we're suing the city of Los Angeles. In other cases, we're trying to defend the city of Los Angeles and their tenant protections. So we really have a certain amount of flexibility because of the pro bono people and the dollars, right? And the very source of private funding that we get to pursue these, you know, sometimes bold and courageous strategies. Like last year when I was like, we're really going to sue Superior Court? Like, are we really doing that? Well, we did. And even though, you know, what was the context? It had to do with the eviction trials that were being pushed forward, and all the judges saying, oh, well, you know, COVID's basically winding down, so we're going to be sending you out to trial. And we're like, but wait. And, you know, even though they never said, okay, we're going to stop doing what we're doing, they kind of stopped doing what they were doing. They slowed down a lot. And that was a big relief valve for our lawyers and for our clients. So, you know, I know we're a little bit over time, so I don't want to take up too much of people's time. But
I'll give in preparing for this, I have a little bit of data. So in last year, we had nearly 4,000 pro bono participants at Public Counsel, of which 3,259 were attorneys. So it's attorneys and others providing pro bono legal services, pro bono services. Attorney hours amounted to 50,000 of 73,000 total hours devoted for free to the clients of Public Counsel. And the value of those pro bono services were estimated to be $43 million. So the point is that unlike the private law firm where we're always looking for clients, you know that there's unlimited demand for the services of the not-for-profit service providers. And then it's how do you serve them? And the staff of Public Counsel and the model of Public Counsel is to leverage itself using pro bono lawyers at the law firms and others. And in that way to provide tens of millions of dollars of legal services where otherwise you simply couldn't. And it is across the range of services. Sometimes it's impact litigation, like you said, and whole armies of lawyers deployed to pursue and vindicate rights. And other times it's one-on-one help where they're trained by the organization and then provide individual help. But the multiplier effect is great because you just have that many resources to help more people. So it's a model that seems to work. And one question is why it isn't duplicated more frequently in other markets. You know, it's nice to be the largest pro bono not-for-profit law firm in the country, but we'd love a rival. We'd like others in other jurisdictions. And sometimes the question is asked, having been started by the LA Bar Association, Beverly Hills Bar Association, whether we should remain a local source of help. There's enough need here, or whether we should be the light for the rest of the nation in terms of showing them the way to provide access to justice. And that's a debate about how much resources we have and whether other communities aren't already well served by the lawyers in that community. But the way we bridge that divide is through the impact litigation. The impact litigation is of national impact. Often the state of Michigan took over the education or so-called education of students in Detroit. And it turned out that 0% of the students in Detroit were reading at grade level in those public schools. Not 10%, 0%. And I, as a corporate lawyer, looked at that. This was not my case. This is Mark and OUL, but Sidley jumped in and helped. But I looked at that and I said, look, they mandate that kids go to school. They write the test, and then nobody who they put through school passes the test. That can't be right. And so Sidley, together with public counsel, sought to create a federal right under the Constitution to literacy, a right to literacy. And they sued Governor Whitmer for that right. And so, are we really an LA organization? And surprise, surprise, the courts in Michigan said there is no such right, the federal court. But the Sixth Circuit overturned that and found a federal right to literacy. Lawrence Tribe called it the next Brown versus Board of Education. And eventually the state of Michigan settled that case, which I think was a good result because it would have gone to the Supreme Court and you could decide for yourself how that might have worked out. But that's a good example of how public counsel itself, relying on pro bonos, is able to create a national impact and an example to others. Tanya?
I think that what's been pointed out earlier is how big the need is. One of the things that I think we'll continue to focus on in the upcoming year is meeting it, expanding our pro bono network. I mean, Dan made a great point and Silvana made a great point. There are only so many Silvanas that exist in the world and that exist in public counsel. No disrespect, he is singular and extraordinary, but there are many, many, many law firms and lawyers at law firms who are looking for ways to contribute and to give back and to try to affect what's really becoming, I think, a perilous situation. Having grown up in Los Angeles, and I'm the child of working people. I didn't burst fully formed from some law firm conference room. But it is a travesty. It's a travesty and it's a tragedy what's happening in this community. And we're only going to meet the problem if we can address it together. If the people who are doing the work, the ground soldiers every day, are able to do that work jointly and in partnership with the folks in some of the big buildings, because that's the only way we're going to attack this. That's the only way we're going to make a dent in a problem that will just get worse if we don't concentrate. So I'm looking forward to another year where we concentrate our efforts in all of the directions that we can go. Silvana, tell us more about your winning.
All I do is win. No kidding. I think we should wrap it up. We're over time. I know everyone wants to get to Lafla and have snacks.
I'll end it on a positive note that we believe, under your leadership, Tanya, that public counsel and institutions and organizations like the ones that are funded by LSC and those that are not, like BetSedec and others, will help bend, as Martin Luther King Jr. said, bend the arc of moral justice, of moral universe towards justice. And I'm confident that it may take time, but together, working together, we can make a difference. Thank you for your time.